Hi, my name is Birji Ravalia. I'm currently taking part in the Berklee Introduction to Music Production course, and this is my first assignment, which is due for that. I'm a music producer. I'm based in Boston, originally from London, moved here about 4 months ago, so let's get on with the course. So today what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing a how-to video on how to record a vocal in a studio environment. This could be either a singer or it could be something that you're recording for yourself for something like a YouTube video. There are a few things you're going to need, some setup bits that you need to go through, and then you've got the end process for the actual recording in software. So without further ado, let's hit record and get on with it. So what's the equipment you're actually going to need in order to record a vocal in a studio environment? There are four main things that you need to have. Number one is a microphone. Number two is an audio interface. Three is the cable to connect those two pieces together. And four is a computer with some software that's connected to your audio interface. All those pieces together are going to allow you to record that vocal. So today, what are we using? We're going to be using a condenser microphone. There are two main types of microphone that you'll find. One's a condenser microphone and one's a dynamic microphone. A dynamic is more of the handheld type of microphone that you've probably seen on stage and so on, like a Shure SM50, 58 or 57 even. Those microphones are great for a stage environment because they will only really take into account the sound coming directly at them. That's what their polar pattern's designed to do. They kind of try to negate everything around them. A condenser microphone, on the other hand, is designed to pick up a lot more. It's a lot more sensitive. It's going to give you a really clean and crisp signal, relatively wide across the the frequency range, which is why they're great in a studio. In a live environment, a bit more tricky because they're going to pick up other sounds which you don't really want. But in a studio, a great all-round piece. Today we're going to be using the Audio Technica. I think it's the AT2020. Pretty inexpensive and will do the job great. Next on the list is our audio interface. We're going to be using the M-Audio Project Mix IO. I know it looks a little bit more complicated than a lot of other interfaces out there. This one's also a control interface for software that you might have, but in essence it's going to do the same kind of job as any other audio interface on the market. It's got a whole bunch of microphone inputs, and we'll go over that in a little bit more detail when we get into the setup. The final piece is an XLR cable. In terms of the hardware setup here, it's a balanced cable which is going to make sure that you don't get any noise in the signal through the actual cable itself. Believe it or not, if you use an unbalanced cable like a guitar cable or something like that, it's not shielded, which kind of means that it's susceptible to actually pick up noise through the length of the cable. So even in those situations, the longer that cable is, the more chance of noise that you're going to have. In a microphone setup like this, using an XLR cable is really a great option because it negates that noise input into your signal. So make sure you've got a mic and an audio interface that uses XLR connections that are balanced. Final piece, as I mentioned, is the software and the computer. As I mentioned, we're going to be using Reason 7, so I'll show you a little bit about that and the actual setup part that we're going to be doing. Right, so we got all the pieces together. How do we actually set it all up and get some sound into our computer? So there are a couple of things you need to do here really. Is once you've got all your equipment together, if you can, switch your audio interface off and your speakers and things like that, just to make the connections. If everything's hooked up and receiving signal through your speaker system, connecting a mic and a cable is one time in that chain that you could get some pretty loud pops through your speakers. There is a chance that you could damage your speakers, and more than that, it's just annoying when you're in a studio environment. You don't want to hurt your ears if you're sitting close to your monitors and get that sound coming through. So switch it off if you can. If you can't, make sure that the input that you're going to be connecting your microphone to, the gain stage is turned down, and then we're in a good place to start. So You're going to need a mic stand. That's one thing we didn't mention before. Mic stands are really just to avoid any complications and problems later and get you a good clean signal. Especially with condenser mics, you're going to need a microphone stand. They're not designed to be handheld. A microphone stand is just going to make sure that it stays put and you're going to get a clean signal as long as your vocalist doesn't move around the room. Once you've got the mic on the stand itself, we're also using a pop shield here today. Pop shields are great just to reduce any kind of high sound pressure variations hitting the microphone like you would get through a pop or a P sound when you're doing any sort of recording. So pretty inexpensive and useful thing just to reduce the chance of that happening. Once you've got that on there, connect your XLR cable. Connect the cable in a way that you can actually wrap it around your mic stand. That's going to reduce the chance of there being loose cables flying around and reduce the chance of accidents happening. It's happened to me before where a vocalist has kind of just swung around a little bit and brought a mic down, and it's a bit of a nightmare to get it back up and running. So just to save any problems later on down the line, wrap the cable around the mic stand slightly just to keep it out of the way. Once you've got that piece done, you're ready to connect your XLR cable to the audio interface. As I mentioned, make sure your gain stage is down. That's the piece that's going to be actually amplifying the voltage signal from your microphone to a line level. Keep that down. Plug your XLR cable in. It's usually a pretty solid connection. Once you've got that piece done, you're ready to start turning your gain stage up. So get your vocalist or yourself in a position where you can actually talk into your microphone or sing some passages that you might be recording later on, and start turning that gain stage up to make sure you're getting a signal. Most audio interfaces will have either a meter on there, or in this case we've got a couple of LEDs. A green one showing that there's a signal being picked up, and a red one if you're starting to clip. That's the most important part here. You do not want to have a signal that's clipping. So you want to make sure that your vocalist or singer is actually going to speak or sing at the loudest point they would do in their recording, and make sure that even at that point you're not getting a red clipping light, which is what you would get on this audio interface here. If you're not sure, just keep the gain down slightly. It's a lot more difficult to do something with a clipped audio signal than it is with one that's slightly lower in gain. You can always correct that in software using multiple tools, but a clipped audio signal is nigh on impossible to do anything decent with if you want a really clean signal. So make sure you set that stage correctly. The next piece you can also do there is most audio interfaces will come with some kind of software specifically to communicate with that interface. Usually there's some level meters and things on there you can check. So double check, just make sure you're getting a good, clean, solid signal, not too low, but more importantly, not clipping. You want to make sure that you've got that set up correctly. At that point, if everything's set up correctly and your computer sees your audio interface and the signal's running through your audio interface and you can see that signal in the software of your audio interface, you should find that you can now move on to your DAW. So that digital audio workstation we're using today is Reason. You'll find that as long as you set the audio track up correctly, and Reason is actually connected to the correct audio interface, all you need to do is make sure that track is selecting an input from the correct input on your audio interface. So in this case we're using channel 2 on the project mix. Get that set up and you should instantly be able to see that when you're talking into your audio, into your mic, sorry, that signal is now flowing into Reason. So for all intents and purposes, you can hit record and off you go. You are now recording a relatively clean signal in the best possible way that you can with the equipment you've got. A few other things that you want to sort of be aware of when you're doing this. Make sure that your vocalist is comfortable. If you're recording a vocal for a track that you've produced or something like that, you want to make sure that you're getting the best performance from that vocalist. Make sure they're comfortable. Don't start yelling at them if they've done something wrong, or then you're not getting the best performance out of them. Yelling at them is probably not going to help. So keep them comfortable. You want to create a good vibe. You want to work with that person. More you get that kind of relationship going on, you're going to get some pretty special performances out of that person. So main thing is to have fun. Make sure everyone's chilled out, having a good time, and you'll get some great music laid down. So that's pretty much it. I mean, we've covered the basics. We've covered the equipment that you're going to need to record a vocal, whether it's a spoken passage or a vocalist from a singer or a rapper or something like that. We've covered the actual pieces that you're going to need, the equipment to connect it all together. So we've covered microphones, some differences between dynamic and condenser mics, interfaces and software and cables. And we've shown you how to set it all up, to get a good clean signal. At this point, it's over to you. Get some recording going, and hopefully you have some fun. All right, see you around. If you've got any comments or any feedback you want to leave, by all means, please leave it on the video. Thanks a lot.